Welcome to Music and Medicine. Welcome to Music and Medicine.
Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis.
Can music literally save someone's life? I mean, can the tones and chords strike a positive resonance in parts of our brain that give us the will to live? Well, music is processed directly by the amygdala, which is part of the brain that's involved in mood and emotions. We know that music can boost the brain's production of the hormone dopamine. This increased dopamine production helps relieve feelings of anxiety and depression. If that is the case, does the ability to have a hit song or even make music and be successful in the industry, as well as to fans, have the ability to lift someone out of a depression themselves? And what about the opposite? Can a lack of success or rejection cause a musician to feel that their life is not worth living? Today, we will speak with 3 people who work in, teach, and sing about the music industry. They will share how music and the industry affected their life and challenged their will to live. Our first guest is P. Frank Williams, an Emmy and 8-time NAACP Image Award-winning executive producer, versatile with 2 decades of experience in film, TV, and journalism. Williams was the co-executive producer of BET's and Critical Content's anti-police brutality series, Cop Watch America.
I grew up in an environment that was both beautiful and tragic at the same time. I know what it's like to try to find somewhere to go shower and fold up my clothes.
P. Frank was riding on a wave of abundant TV production successes, having put out a series of award-winning documentaries like Unsung on TV One, Who Shot Biggie and Tupac, and American Gangster. He describes how the industry can have you on a pedestal and with money in the bank today and flat broke a few months later, living in a car and wondering if life is worth living.
Let's talk a little bit about disappointments and heartache and difficulties, because I think people want to believe, oh man, look at the awards, look at what you've done, or anyone, and it's all a path paved to gold, the Lord blesses and everything goes well. Let's talk about when things get difficult and people get down, sort of where you find that inspiration or where you find that drive to press on no matter what.
Right, I mean, what is it? Is it Langston Hughes? My life ain't been no crystal stair. Is that right?
Life for me.
Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we measure success by how much clothes you got, or who you know, or whatever, what bad girls behind you, or whatever guy, what car you're driving, or whatever. Right. I think those are the material parts of it. Mm-hmm. But I grew up in an environment that was both beautiful and tragic at the same time, where there's a lot of black love and unity. In Oakland 70s, 80s, or whatever, and there's a lot of pain. The birth of crack and drugs and families being decimated. One of them was my own. My mother, when I was 14, 15, I got in a dispute with her and ended up living homeless for a year or 2 and living in the back of my car. And I know what it's like to try to, find somewhere to go shower and fold up my clothes in the back of the car like that and have them for the week. Right. And so, and to take $50 and make that last 3 or 4 days, you know what I mean? And so I think understanding that shapes your story. Mm-hmm. And so I remember one time when I was in Oakland, I had to be maybe 14, 15. And my mom was living in like a homeless shelter. She had lost her apartment or whatever. And me and my brothers was there. And I had to walk from, and you would know, I had to walk from around 65th Village, 69th Village, right there to almost like where I grew up, sort of like by the lake. I'm from the front town. Dubs. And so I had to walk almost like 40, 50 blocks. Right. I just didn't have any money. Like it really was just I could have rolled the bus, literally. Right. It would have been like probably then $1.50. Right. I just didn't have that money. Right. And I promised myself that day that I would never, ever be in that situation again. And so, you pace, I've had big success. I won awards, I've done this, whatever else. A few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, I lost it all. I had a big office, employees, a few contracts fell through. My woman left me. I was literally in the car, like calling a suicide hotline. Like,
wow. That's deep. And I wanted to transition to this whole mental health piece because it's so prevalent in our community. And I think when we look at drugs, and you've covered that a lot for different stories, for different sources, that's often self-medication. That's what we see it as, people trying to. How do you feel you write to or speak to that hurt and that inner place that is okay to ask for help? It's okay to say we can get so down that life is just not even worth living.
Well, again, like it's unfortunate, but I do believe it's about access, right? I was able to go get counseling. I've got counseling multiple times. I've talked to people, figured out my pain, talked to my family, my relationships. A lot of people don't have that access. You know, two people that I knew, baby Chris, rest in peace, Chris Lighty. Another guy named Shakir Stewart. Chris Lighty was the manager, 50 Cent, Mariah Carey. He started with Violator Records, Mobb Deep. You know what I mean? All of that. He's like a seminal person in our culture. I used to see baby Chris at the Tunnel in New York. You're from New York, you know what that is.
The restaurant.
Right. And so, and then another guy named Shakir Stewart, who was an executive at Def Jam, who kind of discovered Rick Ross, Young Jeezy, really helped Beyonce get her legs under her, or whatever. You know, these two guys at the top of their game committed suicide. You know, Chris, I did a show about both of them, and so Chris was so caught up in what everybody worried about he did. He lost a lot of money. He didn't want to look bad in front of the world, right? Because he couldn't deal. And his family kept asking him for money even though he was in pain, you know? And I saw some of his letters that he wrote to his therapist and some of the things, you know, very private. Chris shot himself as well as Shakir. Chris wrote, I've been taking care of everybody else. Who's taking care of me?
Wow.
Right? And so he was in so much trauma from that he had never stopped and realized you don't have to be Superman. You need some help. You know, he just lost it. Shakir got into a situation where he was taking whatever the prescription drug, blanking on the one, the sleeping one, and he was also drinking or whatever, and he had some stress. People threatening him in the music business, and everybody thought he was super successful. Shot himself. So I think as black men, you got to like have that network, and you got to try to get some help or get talk to it. You know what I mean? And for me, thinking about Chris, that was that moment. 6 months now, your whole life can change. You know, I've had hundreds of thousands of dollars in my bank account. I've had 20. You know what I mean? It's the reality of, you know, as 50 say, the game is filled with ups and downs. So I stay on my grind. So you gotta like, it's a marathon, bro. It's a marathon. You know, those moments that you have where you're insecure or you're stressed or your woman left you or you lost your business or, you know, if anything, anybody have learned from the COVID situation, you know, I lost a lot of money from March to like August, September last year. Like, you know, I was surviving off an unemployment check, which is like, that shit is like a bar bill for the way we be moving. And so, you know, I just think that mental health is important in our communities.
Our next guest, Denise Wilson, began her career as a professional R&B singer in a female trio with her sister Crystal at the age of 14 in their hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. After several singles and 2 tri-state hits, they appeared in various venues with R&B musical icons such as Lou Rawls, Della Reese, Curtis Mayfield, and The Impressions, among others. The group appeared on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and the Grammys and worked with Barry White, David Foster, and Ed McMahon. They also worked with their sister Shanice and even on the Broadway musical Les Miserables. But Penny grew increasingly disillusioned with the disempowering characteristics of the entertainment industry for women. For Penny, signing with Motown was a dream come true, but this was all shattered and almost caused her to take her life when her record was shelved, never ever to be released.
And what did you find about that experience? Because I know we talked about it a little bit, that you walked away with in terms of just what it might be like having had that dream of signing and then how it may actually work out versus the dream of signing.
Well, you know, you dream your entire life. I want to be an artist.
Right.
I want a record deal.
Right.
I want to be famous.
Yes.
We got the record deal. We signed with Motown. But the politics came into play. And when the record was shelved, we were suicidal. Both of us.
Right. Very
we were
devastated.
Devastated. And it was our mother, rest her soul. My mother was a strong lady. And she was just not God.
Right.
Anytime we were in pain,
Right.
you know, she would say, that person is not God. You know, and she had us focus spiritually. It was devastating. But we had a gift.
Right.
And I learned that when you have a gift, it's to be given. So we kept doing that. And we were able to bless some people, and we were able to really build large audiences. And then we did some backgrounds with Shanice, and did a few TV shows with our other artists, you know. So we just kept going, and we enjoyed it.
Sure.
You know, God said, and God knows that the day you were born, You just brought so much joy into our family, and you've been doing it ever since.
Thank you.
I don't have children that came through me, but I could not love someone more than I love you.
I feel that experience and that intensity really kind of spurred you to go into education and say, I'm really going to try to help other people really understand this process a little bit more so that they don't turn on themselves and wind up hurting themselves.
Well, I was so disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be mentored by one of the executives at a particular record company.
Right.
And that didn't happen. And I saw other young men get that mentorship. You know? And I was a little devastated. I didn't understand patriarchy.
Right.
I didn't understand male dominance. I was a very strong woman.
Right.
And I felt like, you know, I say what I think. I didn't have the diplomacy and tact that I have learned.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure. You spoke your mind.
You know, I did.
You told them.
But I wasn't nasty.
Right. Just honest.
I was just honest.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not necessarily something people smile on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I met a woman when I decided to go back to school. I was trying to say, I need to go back to school. I can't be hanging around dealing with this mess.
Right.
And you know, I talked to her about, because I was going to go into film.
Yes.
And this young lady, she was younger than I am, and I was getting ready to determine what my focus would be.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I think you should focus on critical studies instead of production.
Right.
Because I wanted to do television and film, media studies. And I was like, why? Why not production?
Right.
Or screenwriting or something.
Right.
She said, because you will be empowered. And when she said that word,
Then
I said, I need to be empowered.
Right.
So definitely, I went into the critical studies focus.
Sure.
And I'm very thankful
Sure.
that I was.
And is that something you feel you do with your students now? Really try to empower them to have the self-esteem and the confidence and be able to think critically as opposed to only maybe getting caught up in the superficial that one might find in the media business?
You know, when I started learning that our actual connection to reality was pre-planned,
Right.
that we are inculcated or we're brought up with thoughts and ideologies that existed before we were ever born.
Right.
We buy into that. So we're not thinking our own thoughts.
Right.
I ask my students, whose thoughts do you think with? And a lot of times they say, I think with my own thoughts.
Right.
So really? So I said, well, who are you? And said, well, I'm John. And I said, well, anybody could be John.
Right.
Well, who are you? Well, I'm a student. I said, well, all of you are students.
Right.
What do you mean by that? You know, so I get them to understand that they are a concoction of belief systems and thoughts
I see.
that existed before their time, and that they are products of culture.
Right.
And we need to understand that, because we're so programmed, and if we buy into a lot of the ideologies, like what is beauty, what is the beauty standard?
Right.
You know, as an African American woman, I know that the beauty standard for many, many years, and things are changing now with social media,
Right.
was white,
Right. Essentially.
European beauty standards. When I was coming up, you know, people would say, and I even interviewed someone on my radio show not that long ago, who would say, well, I'm so black and ugly. I'm like, where did you get that concept? Let's talk about where you got that from. What does that mean? So learning, you know, when I went to school and I studied critical studies, I started learning about where pain comes from, and it's the belief system. If we really know the truth of who we really are, made in the image and likeness,
Right.
the power that we have, it is so freeing.
Right.
And of course, I try to impart that to my students. You know, my main thing with them is to let them know their worth, their value.
Inseparable. Oh, that's how it is. Inseparable. And for the rest of our years, to know you'll always be around.
The show's called Music and Medicine. When you hear that, what do those words mean to you?
Well, music is medicine. I know when my heart aches, sometimes I have to put on my old Dionne Warwick music to comfort me and make me feel like I was when I was like I felt when I was a little girl. Music is, if you look at it from just listening to it, that's one part. But when you become an artist, you need medicine. What is that? You need someone to take care of you. You need to make sure that you are surrounded by the right people, that you're hearing the real truth, that you're not selling your soul, that you can navigate this industry, which can be very devastating, without losing your soul. So my thing is, and what I long to do, is to help people navigate this industry and make it through without losing their minds. Unfortunately, we've got our Whitney Houstons. We've got our Michael Jacksons who Michael bought into the whole thing about his looks.
Sure, yes, completely.
And what did it do? You know, Whitney was in pain. You know, you have these entourages. Their egos are built by just being near you. I was with so-and-so last night.
Sure.
You know, but do they care about you? As fans, do we really care about our artists? You know, or do we use them for the time, throw them away, and take the next new thing? You know, so artists need to understand on an intellectual level, not only the business, but they need to be in tune with who they are spiritually.
How it is inseparable,
And for the rest of our years,
it's so wonderful.
To what extent you feel like your own life has now come full circle? You at one point had really to deal with this devastation of changing your sort of career path, and now you're helping others try to avoid that error or that challenge. To what extent does it almost seem fulfilling? You've come 360 now and really are somebody that wouldn't maybe be as devastated by not getting a record deal today.
well, I've seen people with record deals that have committed suicide.
Our third guest is singer Nell Rose. Playwright William Shakespeare wrote, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name, would smell as sweet." So much is true for up-and-coming R&B talent Nell Rose, who happens to bear the same name. She integrates mystique and raw emotions into her music as well as her stage performances. Just a few years ago, she faced many health challenges and surgeries that caused her to lose her voice and her hearing. When she lost the will to live because the very voice she had been given was gone, she felt that the music in her died. Her mother helped her to realize that suicide was not a realistic option, so she trained herself to speak, hear, and ultimately sing again. Now, the show's called Music and Medicine, and I understand that many people, and even you more personally, have dealt with some health challenges. Tell us a little bit about sort of how that came, or at least a diagnosis you may have had related to your throat, if I understand.
Yeah, so it's crazy how this happened. Everything was quite back-to-back. At the end of 2017, we had a major loss in the family, and when that happened, I decided to get a physical. Mm-hmm. And when I went to get a physical, they found masses in my throat. You know, with further testing, and at the time I was actually a full-time teacher. I wasn't even a full-time musician at the time, but I was singing at night. You know, I was living in New York at the time. Sure. And I, went to get further testing, and I was like, is this why I'm getting hoarse a lot? And they were like, no. They sent me to the ENT, and I got scoped for something else. And they found out that I have cysts on my vocal cords. Right. So it was two different throat issues that I was facing at the same time. that would require 2 different surgeries.
Wow.
I decided to just go with the one that was more life-threatening, and I removed the masses and half of my thyroid, and did voice therapy for months. I couldn't sing for months, and during that time of resting my voice and learning to talk properly and sing properly again, I went to the ENT again to check out my hearing, because I was like, since I'm resting, I might as well figure out what's going on, because I'm struggling to hear as well. At that time, they found out that there's 2 different types of hearing loss, and I had both in my right ear.
Oh, wow.
A sensory neural, were they saying that type of word, or?
Yeah, I can't even think of it at the moment, but
it's conductive.
Yeah, conductive,
Sure.
and hearing loss runs in my family, but not the type that I had. It was, too extensive. So even now, I have a hearing aid in, but that all happened at the same time, and just battling, everything that's supposed to be help me for music was being taken away from me. It felt at the same time, but work through it with mental therapy and voice therapy and God and family and loved ones. I worked through it, and now I moved to LA and I sing full time.
Can we dive into that a little bit?
Right, that's amazing.
I guess I want to move back a little bit, because before you just mentioned you going to the doctor, your face lit up in passion, talking about your gift of singing and what that meant for you as a child and as an adult to the world. So then you go to the doctor and you find, out you have this condition with your throat, and you have to. What was that like for you mentally, to then have to think, I can't do and perform this gift that I have only done this is all I've done, all I know, this is what gives me my joy. How did you find your joy?
Ooh, that took a long time. I will tell you that. When I thought that I wouldn't be able to sing again, I didn't really have the desire to live. And it took, building with my therapist and realizing that I have more to offer in life than just my voice, but I thought that I only had my voice to give. And, learning to, see that there's other things I can do in life, even though music is, for me, number one. But if I wasn't able to sing again, I still belong here. And that took a long time to unpack and go through. And if I didn't have therapy, I don't know where I would be right now. I probably wouldn't even be here.
Yeah. Well, mental health today is such a big theme, and I think you just unpacked something that's so important. And thank you for highlighting that. It's so easy to identify ourselves in one box, and your comfort level with going and getting therapy and really working through that and being comfortable to even speak about it, because a lot of times in our community, let's be honest, let's keep it real, like, oh, I won't say nothing about it. But that fear to do it, because honestly what I expected you to say was your faith and some of the things with your father and things of that nature. So I really loved hearing that you did the voice therapy, which is a process unto itself. Talk to us about that piece, and then we'll talk a little bit about the mental health aspects.
The voice therapy?
What does that involve? Because again, these are big words that seem so simple, but I don't want our audience to lose it.
Yeah, so for voice therapy, it was literally learning how to speak properly without impacting what was going on in my throat, because this is something I just have to live with. It was either have a second throat surgery or just learn how to cope with what you're dealing with, and I decided to stick with, the coping, because I was scared to do surgery again. And literally certain vowels, learning to breathe properly, even like if I'm about to perform, she would teach me that, you can blow through a straw and it can help open up your vocal folds, and just little things that you don't even realize. Talking too low sometimes can, hurt your voice and things of that nature. So it took months of just even just talking and then singing, and then, levels, because it took me a while to even sing one of my original records.
Wow.
Just to get through one song. And that was heartbreaking for me. I was so hard on myself. And she was like, take it easy, you just went through a major surgery, you'll get there. And now I'm there. And it's so exciting because there was a time that I didn't think I would be here.
I just want to mention, you said that you didn't have the will to live.
Yeah.
And so I can't brush past that for someone to say that.
Yeah.
You now have the will to live.
Yeah.
How did you find that will?
Therapy and prayer, and my mom, literally my mom. When I told her these things, it broke her heart, you know, and I told her if I made it through this season.
Today on Music and Medicine, we looked at the mind-body connection and the way that music can serve as medicine to keep people from taking their life. And yet, just as easily, music can be weaponized to have a person think that they are worthless if they don't have a hit, can't make a living in the industry, or have lost their voice. B. Frank continues to make successful documentaries and is not afraid to share that mental health issues in the music community are real, and he continues to encourage young people to speak up as he is doing today. Penny continues to teach her students that popular culture should not define who they are, but that self-love comes from within, and that should be projected with confidence. And Nell, who's currently a member of the Sunday service choir that travels and performs with Kanye West, takes us out with a voice she has reclaimed through living and loving her unique place in this world. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis.
You were the one for me, but that was a lie. Oh, baby, yeah. Oh, and I gave to you the best of me, but you had so much pride. Oh, baby. Want to breathe and stop. Just give me 5 seconds so I can find myself. I need to fix my heart, can't fix nobody else. I need to get over you. I deserve better than you. Just give me 5 seconds so I can find myself. I knew you were no good for me, but I was so blind. Oh, baby. Whoa. See, I tried to make it work, yes, I really did. But I ain't no magician, love ain't no game. It's enough to drive me insane. Got me going crazy, got me going crazy, crazy over you. You really put me through it, babe. Yeah, and I just don't wanna lose myself. I just want to breathe and stop. Just give me 5 seconds so I can find myself. I need to fix my heart, can't fix nobody else. I need to get over you. I deserve better than you. Just give me 5 seconds so I can find myself. Seconds to catch my breath. This is only a test with you.